Hey, everybody. Welcome into the Volquest Thursday Mailbag Podcast. Each and every Thursday right here on Volquest and on the YouTube channel. As always, like this video and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Big thanks for the questions. We got tons to get into on basketball and recruiting, football. Baseball season's right around the corner. There was a Kirby Puckett drop in there, so I appreciate that. But most importantly, here to begin today's show.
We'll see you tomorrow night.
I'm not gonna ask you about any more baseball references because I don't realize your age, so I don't know what you know and don't know in terms of old guys. So
do you know who George Brett is?
Do you know who Babe Ruth is? What about Mickey Mantle? Have you heard of those guys?
Yeah, those two guys are not in the same sentence as Kirby Puckett. And trust me, I know Kirby Puckett's baseball card now from Baseball Reference.
Do you know George Brett?
I do.
Hey, interesting note. I had George Brett cleats when I played T-ball. I had Brett 5 cleats. They were the coolest cleats. I had the most overpriced. My mom and dad went and bought me McGregor cleats for the rest of my baseball brief career because I was terrible at the sport. But my first year T-ball, I rocked some George Brett 5. They're actually turf shoes. They weren't real cleats because in Kansas City they were playing on turf. But I was pretty doggone cool in my green Pirates uniform with my blue and white George Brett 5s.
Austin, look at Brett having a little swag back in the day.
Oh.
I went McGregor for the next 40 years, Eric Kane. There was not much swag.
Somewhere it left him along the way.
I texted, for everybody watching and listening at home, I texted the group chat the other day, and I'm like, damn, Brent, you got me killed today. And he's like, genuinely, I could feel it. He felt bad. He was like, I didn't mean to, man. I'm sorry. And I'm like,
I didn't realize you weren't born when Kirby Puckett played. All right?
It's okay. It's all right. World Baseball Classic coming up.
Way to tell me I'm old.
Looking forward to it. All right. Hey, most importantly, though, I do want to give a big shout out and a big welcome to Exterior Home Solutions, a proud sponsor now of the Volquest podcast on Tuesday and, of course, the Thursday Mailbag Question. A great company, Austin, and we're thrilled to be partnering with them.
Yeah, Jeff, Dustin, the whole group at Exterior Home Solutions. We're excited about them coming on. Brent, longtime partners here in East Tennessee. And, you know, if you need help with the roof, siding, a garage build, they've got you covered with Exterior Home Solutions.
Yeah, and it's not, they're moving on up towards Upper East Tennessee as well, expanding every day. They've been in business for a long time. Big friend of the community, big fan of the Vols, and are happy to be partnered up with us. And obviously, we're elated to be partnered with them and look forward to telling you more about them in the coming weeks. And again, we appreciate the trust they have in us and the belief they have in us to join us and a partnership here. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast, and we're really excited to do business with those guys. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. We'll start with Noland AV. Austin Price, when you say James Pierce has some growing up to do, what exactly do you mean by that? Just needs a better attitude, late to meetings, doesn't practice hard, etc.
I just think it's just natural maturing. I mean, so many of these kids walk in the door and they've been the cat's meow at the high school level, and and in some instances, they just don't have the same, I guess, just routine. They're the same expectations coming from high school to college, as far as just how much more regimented it all is, and you go from 2 to 2:15 here, 2:15 to 3 here, 3 to 3:30 here, and how it's just kind of more regimented. So I think it's just about maturing, understanding how you kind of work with your teammates, work with the coaches, all that stuff that I think, that again, he'll get there. It's just a matter of, just kind of having it all click. When you're a freshman, Brent, and you're not playing outside of special teams, it's easy to not have maybe the buy-in that you would have if you're going to play 45 or 50 snaps.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a natural thing. I mean, the Eric Berry's being ready to play out of the gate, those are the exceptions to the rule, okay? And I know we live in a world where guys are playing soon, earlier and earlier, and all those types of things. I understand that. There's a physical component to this where you have to be physically ready to play. Sometimes there's a case where guys are not, and then there's a mental component to where sometimes guys aren't mentally ready for what is at this level. You got to understand, for a guy like James Pierce, when do you think the last time football was hard for him? I mean, right? I mean, when he was 7 years old, he was probably the best player on the field when he was 7. He's probably always been that way, right? And so you get into a situation where you've always been that guy, and you get to college, and all of a sudden you're going against Darnell Wright. Well, guess what? Darnell's pretty good. And so it's it's one of those things where when it doesn't come as natural or as easy, it's not hard to fall out of the buy-in, if you will. I don't want to make it sound like the kid didn't try. It's nothing like that. I mean, there's no like huge red flags. It's just for him to get and be a factor the way that he needs to be a factor. Tennessee needs him to be a factor, Austin, this fall. He's got to practice harder, right? He's got to do extra film study. He's got to do things because he can't just run around the offensive tackle. And that's just that's a natural progression for a lot of guys. He is much more the rule than the exception.
I think the easiest way to say it is he's got to be more consistent all the way around.
Yeah.
You guys were talking about, the adjustment coming out of high school, and I mean, you're on a routine, you're on a schedule. You do this at this time, this at this time, this at this time. On the flip side of that, when you leave college, and sometimes guys go to the NFL, you don't have that structure. You have a lot more freedom, and so it's an adjustment both ways as well.
Well, I mean, I would say this. I would say a guy like Tyreek Key has had an adjustment period for Tennessee basketball, and he's a guy who's played 4 years of college basketball. But how they do it at Indiana State, the level of commitment for playing and the level of scouting. I mean, at Indiana State, they don't have, a bench full of guys in suits or quarter zips now since nobody wears a suit, right? I mean, they don't have the depths of that. So there's a little bit more, hey, let's go out and do what we do and let's go play. Here, it's a lot more, okay, when they see number one go up and this guy goes to this side of the floor, this means this, you've got to get here. I mean, it's just more detailed. It's more intricate. And I think there's an adjustment for guys like that. And he's a guy who's been a college athlete. And I would say if you got him on the truth monitor and asked him what he thought, I would bet he told you that this adjustment to Tennessee has been more challenging and difficult than he thought it would be. So again, it's not that out of the world that a guy's having, that a guy's spent a year adjusting to college, and now he's got to take a step through that adjustment. And that's where James Pierce is.
Let's look over here to Nashville 615. What are your predictions for what needs to happen for Tennessee in order to make it out of the Sweet 16? Is it as simple as staying hot from the three-point line? The big men have to play better, just getting lucky? Austin, I think it's all the above and then some, right?
I think it's just making shots, whether that's Kamwan knocking down 12-footers routinely or Santi, and Key, getting a little hotter and making, bunch more threes. I mean, I just think seeing the ball go through the hole more frequently, Hubs keeps saying and everybody keeps saying defense travels. I agree. The defense is going to be there, but if they can't score, then it neutralizes how good a defense they are.
Well,
so if they can score, they can just make more shots, be more frequent about it. It's going to be tough to knock them out.
Yeah, if you think this team is going to win 2, 3, 4 tournament games, averaging 48 points a game or 51 points a game, it's not going to happen.
Nope.
Right? You're going to run up against some team that shoots the ball well. I mean, you're not going to win through the tournament that way. You're going to have to score more points. I think they've got to find some kind of inside scoring. Now, does that mean back to the basket? Does that mean Kamwa? That I don't know. Maybe that's Josiah James for 15 foot. Somebody's got to score in the paint. It can't just be, perimeter jump shots from the three-point line. Because the issue I see, Eric, when you watch this team play and you watch teams defend them, nobody's worried about the post. They're playing everything straight up, man-to-man in the post. They're not worried about it. Nobody's diving for help. You want to play inside out if they're worried about you scoring inside, because that forces the defense to collapse. You get ball rotation, you get reversal, you get open looks. If I'm guarding a perimeter guy and I'm playing Tennessee right now, I'm not leaving his hip pocket. I'm staying on the perimeter guy because I don't feel like my defender in the post needs any help because Tennessee's not proven to me that they can score inside night in and night out. Somebody's got to score in the painted area of the floor. Whoever that is, someone has to do that.
Yeah, it's got to be consistent too. And I mean, that's what Kentucky did, right? I mean, Uros, good job, man. You scored 19 against Kentucky. I mean, they were guarding you, right? I mean, and with Texas, a little bit of the time, I mean, you saw Olivier just get really hot and have a great game. You just need some consistency there. You also need the big guys to rebound more consistently. Olivier's not a rebounder. Julian Phillips is not really a rebounder. Jonas Adu's a good rebounder. You just need more consistent in that regard. But I guess my initial remark on kind of all those things that the poster listed off. I mean, to make a deep run, you're going to have a little bit of that. And luck certainly is one in regards to some matchups. Let's go to Rhett Lawyer. Once the SEC expands to 16 games, do you continue to schedule
16 teams?
16 teams, yeah, 16 teams. Do you continue to schedule intrastate non-conference football games as the last games of the regular season? If I own the TV rights, I would not want the last games to be meaningless in the conference race. I would be more interested in South Carolina, Kentucky, Florida, LSU, Georgia, Oklahoma. Would you change Vandy to Tennessee and Texas in that regards?
Well, no, because if that's the case, you're going to go Texas and Texas A&M that last weekend. You're going to go, Alabama, Auburn that last weekend. I mean, I just think
Ole Miss, Mississippi State.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see that changing. Like I think you stay with the states that have two teams. They're going to play each other there, that time of year.
Yeah, I think the question is going to be, and I think this is what he was kind of alluding to.
The Georgia, the Clemson, South Carolina's, Georgia, right. Georgia Tech's, yeah.
You're right, Florida, Florida State. Now, okay. I'm not sure where he brought the Texas element into that part of the question, but the initial part that I read out of that question when I looked at it, before we started recording was, what do you do with Florida, Florida State? Because if you are the TV rights holder, are you more interested in Florida, Florida State the last weekend? Are you more interested in Georgia and Florida the last weekend when you talk about playoff rankings or playoff standings and that type of thing? I don't know. I mean, the league has, there was talk in the 90s. Eric, you weren't alive when this happened, so I don't blame, and nobody blame Eric for this, Austin. But there was a lot of people felt like and said Tennessee, Florida should be playing at the end of the year and not playing week 2 or week 3 because the conference race in the Eastern Division was dictated by the week 3 of the season.
And then when 9/11 happened, they kind of got that wish for a 1 year.
They got that wish. And you know what? It was a great game in 2001 because you had everything was on the line the last week of the season. It was a true playoff game. But the conference never forced Florida State and Florida to move that game at all. And as a result, it never happened. So I don't know if the conference will step in and do that or not. I know this. I'm sure the conference doesn't want – and they don't want to be responsible for breaking up those rivalry games, right? So if you say, hey, we're not going to play them the last weekend, does Clemson say, okay, we're not going to play the game? And Clemson's answer is, well, we wanted to play it, but the SEC said we couldn't play it, late in the year, so we're not going to play that game. I don't know what will happen there. TV's got a lot of power, as we're finding out with Oklahoma and Texas trying to get out of the league. So we'll see what happens with that. But that'll be a TV call. But I would say TV would rather have SEC matchups the last week of the season than an SEC team playing a non-SEC team in terms of conference races. I would.
Yeah, that's a tough scenario because you don't want to give up those rivalry games, certainly. But I mean, take it like your South Carolina. SEC goes to a 9-game conference schedule. You're playing, say you keep that game, you're playing Clemson. You're not going to go out and schedule anybody else. I mean, you'd be stupid to do that, right? So, right. It's difficult. Athron's got a couple of questions. Now that Ablin is announced, who would you say are the top tight end targets?
Well, I mean, it's holding on to Jonathan Eccles. It's, Jaden Riddell, the hip kid out of Arizona. I mean, really the 4 that, Matt talked to after Alec was hired, that Alec talked to that first night after he was announced, that's to me your top 4 on the board. I'm not saying there can't be other tight ends on the board because there are, but you're coming out of the gate swinging if you're Alec Ablin. You're not waiting to call your top guys. You're calling them right away. And Riddell been really good. I thought was close to pulling the trigger back in the fall. We'll be back in March. I think Tennessee's in a good spot there. Eccles, again, that one, if you hold on to him, great. If you don't, to me, that's not on Alec Ablin. That's just, it was going
to happen, right?
No matter who coaches tight ends, that was probably going to be tough to hold on to. Didn't matter if Golish stayed or if they hired the greatest tight end coach on the earth. That one's just going to be more difficult. It's not saying he's leaving the class because I don't think that's a locked in deal either. I'm just saying you just got to keep, swinging there, keep trying to hold on to him and make him understand, hey, the same reasons you picked Tennessee last summer are still here. There's no, and path to the field here with, look at the tight end room. I mean, it's going to be Ethan Davis, and then next spring it might be us again. We got this spring off from having to play linebacker and corner the last 2 years. We'll be back playing tight ends next year. I guess that tight end room is going to be spark.
You got to think Tennessee's going to be portal hunting next year too in the tight end room, just for depth. I mean, that's why I think they would have clearly taken another tight end. And look, if somebody went in the portal late this year and had multiple years of eligibility left, Austin, I think they would still entertain that if they felt like he was a quality player, because you got to have some kind of veteran presence in there next year, both mentally and physically, right? I mean, I think you like Ethan Davis, but you can't roll out two, first-year tight ends out there and say that's going to be our tight ends. You got to get somebody with some physical and mental maturity about them. So I think that the portal is going to be pretty fascinating at that position for another year.
Well, that's why I think it's so paramount. No matter what happens with Ethan Davis this fall, he needs to be a workout warrior for the next 365 days, because they need him hitting the ground running in spring practice 2024. No matter what he does, he may score 3-4 touchdowns this year. I don't know. But what I'm saying, though, is his biggest need and Tennessee's biggest need is for him to be on point, ready to go when they head to spring in 2024.
Can the basketball team win anything if the offense no-shows in March? For example, is the defense good enough to carry this team? Brent, I would say, in March, the answer is no. You got to score, right?
Well, the defense you can't have a bad day at the office defensively, okay? Yeah. Because the scoring goes down in the NCAA tournament. That's just a fact. Now, you'll have a couple wild games in the first round where, North Dakota State will make 12 threes because nobody knows who North Dakota State is, right? And, you'll see something like that happen in the early rounds. But as you progress, typically scoring goes down and you get in those possession-by-possession games, and you've got to get stops. So you have to play great defense. You don't win the tournament by not playing great defense. You also don't win the tournament by averaging less than 50 points a game. So you're going to have to score.
Shooting 30% from the field.
They have to play better. That's the bottom line, is they have to make shots. They've got to create some opportunities to get easy shots. And you just, you got to play well for 3 weekends. And that's the challenge of the tournament. And it's hard to do because you're going to have a night where you shoot it well. In the tournament, you're going to have a night where you don't shoot it well. Your defense has to carry you. The good news is this defense has been very consistent, which you think will help you carry through some offensive lulls. They cannot survive 3 weekends of an offensive lull in the NCAA tournament and be playing, the last weekend, which is what everybody would dearly love and hope to happen. The same way they're not going to get to the championship game of the SEC tournament if they have a couple of bad nights offensively. You might get away with one of them, but you're not going to get through 3 basketball games or 4 basketball games in a row where you don't score. It's just not going to happen, in my opinion.
Awesome. What's the latest with Boo Carter? Looked like a commitment was just bound to happen a couple months ago.
Yeah, Matt's talked about this, and it's so true. Is Boo is someone who, is kind of his timeline's bounced around a little bit. It was going to be at the end of last year, then it was going to be the spring. We'll see. I think March or April at the absolute earliest. A lot of it depends on, Boo. Like, what's he want? I think he's always, felt very good about Tennessee, but he's not pulled the trigger yet. And, if he wants it to end, Tennessee will be glad for it to end and take his commitment, I believe. But if he wants to keep dragging it out and go see more schools, then, I guess we'll brace for the long haul in this deal. But again, I think that his timeline has kind of changed a little bit. Originally, he was going to do something at the end of 2022, but that's kind of morphed into 2023.
Yeah. Feels like he's going to take more visits to me, but who knows what'll happen there. It's like, because it changes every day, but seems like he's seemingly liking some of the visits right now to me, Austin. But I don't. Well, that's from 10,000 feet. I've not talked to him.
Yeah, it's like Marcus Gorey. Marcus Gorey's telling told us at the junior day back in January. Sometime during the season, like if Marcus Gorey doesn't commit till the season, then I'll do a raffle and pay for somebody's Volquest for 2024 at the $100 rate, not the $1 rate. I just don't believe he's waiting until the season. If he's not off the board by August or by September 1, then I'll be stunned. In reality, I think I'll be stunned if he's still, on the board, come July. But, that's just kind of my feel. So, again, what kids are saying and what actually happens a lot of times is 2 different things.
I'll grab this last one here from Math Run, and Brent, tell me if I'm wrong here. The question, do any of the freshman linebackers see significant enough time this season to warrant burning a red shirt? I don't think they'll be redshirted because I think they will play special teams. That's what linebackers do, and that's what the linebackers did this past year. I mean, unless one is just not close to being on the field, but the hope is that you have T-Lander, Jalen Smith, and Aaron Carter at the minimum playing every single special teams units on the field for 30 snaps a game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you redshirt them. I mean, I think redshirting kids gets harder and harder, right? I think there's a few positions you can do that at, but linebacker is going to play special teams, and if those guys are really good, who knows what they look like 4 years into the program. I don't think you sit back and say, hey, we're not going to play those guys. I think you're playing them on special teams. So I do not anticipate any of them redshirting unless physically they're just not ready, and that would surprise me.
Perfect example, Caleb Perry this last year played in mop-up duty a couple snaps at linebacker, but he was on every single special teams unit, made a difference in a couple of those games like Kentucky, nearly blocking a punt. He's kind of where I'm going with this.
Yeah,
and those guys might play more linebacker.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, Elijah Herring played more snaps, but it was in some special packages. They played him early. He didn't play linebacker for probably half the season. He probably didn't get any snaps, but he played every special team. So I just think that position is such a mainstay on special teams. You're not redshirting any of those guys if they're physically ready.
NWGA Vol says, I'm fascinated by Colorado's usage of media platforms, particularly through YouTube, where it appears nothing is immune from being posted for all to see. In your guys' opinion, is this a strategy that more teams will implement, particularly in the NIL era with kids and wanting to build their followings?
No, I don't. I do not see other schools with all access type stuff like that. Now, players can do kind of what they want to do, with Instagram, and if an individual player wanted to do something, I guess they could. But no, I don't think the Colorado players are sitting there going, all access here helps me build my brand. I mean, all access works at Colorado right now because it's Deion. And everybody knows, even Eric Kane knows who Deion Sanders is. But, it's one of those things, AP, where I think it's
brave, great, right?
Yeah, it's the personality of Deion Sanders that generates some things there. I don't think Colorado is sitting there going, hey, this is going to improve doing this improves the NIL value of our individuals on our football team. I don't see coaches opening up like that.
Well, I mean, I just think that I don't think it helps you build your brand. Now, kids may get sucked into that and think it's going to, but I don't think I think that's kind of fake. It's like fake brand building is what I would say. Again, you're right. I mean, people know who Deion is, but how many people are actually sitting around watching, all access Colorado Buffalo football? Maybe a few stragglers, but for the most part, it's just going to be Colorado people. And so if you're trying to build your brand, it's got to be more, a little bit more broad than that. And, as for Eric Kane, do you know who Darryl Green is?
Yes, I do.
Where did he play? Who did he play for?
Darryl Green played for the Cardinals. Correct?
For the Redskins.
Darryl Green coached the Cardinals, did he not?
That's Dennis Green.
Oh, Dennis Green, yeah.
The threads are lining up for you, Eric Kane. You can't do it. We got to edit this part out for Eric Kane here. Help him out, AP.
Yeah, whatever.
We're going to have to help him. Here's the thing, too. I do think to the answer to his question, Eric, I do think you will see schools do more and more, continue to try to do more and more social media stuff and market and brand that way. But I don't see coaches around the country doing the all access thing the way Deion Sanders is. I don't want anybody to say that, they're not going to do, Instagram videos as a team. They're not going to, show hype clips here, do different things there, some all access mic'd up short segment things. You're going to see some of that, but I don't think you're going to see what's the HBO show that they do? Hard Knocks. I don't think you're going to see a bunch of college teams go, let's do a Hard Knocks thing, kind of like Colorado's doing, because I don't think there's enough college coaches out there that think there's any benefit of doing that for them.
Hey, Hubbard, if we delete it, then the GQ is going to simply say, he is who we thought he is, and we let him off the hook.
I love that. R.I.P. All right, Rocky Top Matt. Why didn't Coach Josh Heupel put Ablin out on the road as a recruiter before he hired him? Wouldn't that have been a great chance to evaluating his recruiting ability? What, if anything, do you read into Heupel's decision to put an analyst out there on the road instead?
Hey, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I've done a little digging. This was the reason I was given. Max Thurman had done a nice job with the 24s at certain positions. So when trying to get out on the road a little bit and try to keep some momentum with 24s, there was a group of 24s that knew him really, really well. And so that's why they elected to put him out on the road when they were down a coach instead of going with Alec Ablin. Now, I can buy that to a degree, but you were out for multiple weeks. I think it would have behooved Alec Ablin and Josh Heupel to put Alec Ablin out on the road for at least a week. Let him get his feet wet a little bit. Even if you want to put Max out because he knows this high school coach or that high school coach or this recruit or that recruit. I think it still would have behooved you to put Alec Ablin out in some form or fashion in the month of January. But hey, that's the decision they made. It's water under the bridge.
Yeah, you're not going into homes. I mean, let go start building some high school coaching relationships would be what I think would be of some benefit there. The other thing you wonder too is just how important it is going by and seeing a bunch of 24s and 25s in January. With all the visits kids take now, has that taken on a little bit of a less value than it did? Used to, it was a big deal, right, AP? Because the coach had so many things they had to do in January because they had to make 30 in-home visits to the class they were assembling in February. So if the coach came by and saw the quarterback in next year's class or the number one running back in next year's class, that was a big deal because he had so many other things to do. There's no work to do in January for the February class for the most part. So all you're doing is going out and evaluating those guys. I don't know that going by and seeing those for the next year class, I don't know that it carries the weight that it carried a few years ago because you're seeing so many of them now compared to what you used to see before the early signing date came in.
iHeart Vols wants to know, with the Volquest edition of Matt Ray to cover recruiting, will Austin transition into a Roy Firestone role for the side? If so, who will be the first guest on Vol Club Confidential to make him cry?
To make Austin cry, or is Roy Austin going to make somebody on Vol Club Confidential cry? Didn't Firestone make everybody else cry? He didn't cry, did he? I don't remember Roy Firestone crying a lot.
I think the way the question reads is it would make Austin cry. So
who's going to be? I'm going to be Jim Rome, and someone's going to be Jim Everett. Who's going to be that? Who's going to be that?
Is there a better chance of you getting attacked and a punch thrown at you? Are you openly weeping over somebody's story in Vol Club Confidential?
I'm not a crier, really. I'm not saying I can't be emotional because I can, but I'm not going to be a crier over Tennessee football or someone's story. As for someone trying to fight me for calling them the wrong name, I'm not gonna mess up the name or insult them.
That would be me.
For everybody wondering right now, yes, I watch that video every year on the anniversary because he tweets it out, and I love it. And I think it's hilarious.
I'm not transitioning into anything. I would just venture to say, I would say Matt Ray. To put this in a baseball terms for Kane, since he's our baseball guy.
Yeah.
He is Dave Kane or Matt Ray's going to be David Wells or David Cohn or Andy Pettit or Roger Clemens, and I'm going to be Mariano Rivera. So,
Austin just called himself the closer, Eric Kane. The closer.
Austin Price. Hold on, for everybody out there that thinks I don't know any baseball. Austin Price just announced himself as the first unanimous Hall of Famer ever in Mariano Rivera. I love it.
It's put in Braves terms.
You're the Gene Garber. You're the Steve Bedrosian Gene Garber.
Well, I was going to say, you could go Steve Bedrosian. I was going to go, if we're going to stick with the early 90s Braves, early 90s, back before Kane was born, in that same Kirby Puckett timeline, we'll go Matt Ray is the Steve Avery, and I am the Alejandro Pena.
Mark Wohlers?
He was mid-90s, but yes, you could go that as well. It doesn't have to be the only it doesn't have to be Mariano Rivera.
I'm going to call you Jesse Orozco.
That's fine too. Either way, recruiting doesn't change. This site only got better with Matt Ray.
Absolutely.
I hope everybody understands how much better it's gotten with Matt Ray, and you can expect me to continue to be me.
First
there's
ever
good and
unanimous
bad
Hall of
in that,
Famer.
right?
Yeah, there's good and bad in me being me. I'm gonna be a smart aleck, but I'm gonna have fun. We're gonna do chats. Nothing changes. There's nothing changes from my perspective. We just get mad on here, and it just makes us better.
Arberger wants to know what upperclassman is starting to put in the work focus and looks ready for a Theo Jackson, Jalin Hyatt, Cedric Tillman type leap this offseason.
I don't know. I mean, if you asked me the past 2 Februarys, I wouldn't have said Jalin Hyatt. I would have told you Jalin Hyatt needs to have a Theo Jackson type deal. He needs to have a great offseason, but I didn't know on February the 8th that Jalin Hyatt had, quote, turned the corner and done a 180.
He's going to get 5 touchdowns against Alabama.
Right. I mean, so I mean, there are certainly candidates out there for some guys. I mean, look, some of those veteran defensive backs need to. I mean, I think Danico Slaughter is a great example of a guy who, if his buy-in to it, if they find him a position, his buy-in to the position is at a higher level, I think Danico Slaughter can further take off. And he did some good things, but I think he could even further take off this fall. But in terms of what guys making the most noise right now, I don't know. I mean, heck, there's 19 new guys on campus to try to figure out who they are. I can tell you this, Deontay Thornton, he looks like a dude. Right, AP?
Oh, well, he's pretty now.
Yeah, he looks like a dude.
I'm curious
to see what he looks like, because when he walks through the building, everybody goes, who's that guy? Right? Yeah. Who is that guy? And then
if his play matches just his presence walking through, then watch out. Again, Halsley talked about him being super fast. We all know Heupel loves guys that can run.
He's got some size to him, too. I mean, he's not rail thin. He's well put together.
No. Again, he is – when I saw him at the airport, he is, in my opinion, the perfect outside option in this offense. Can he play slot? Sure, but he looked perfect to be out on the edge in this offense.
I can understand why he looked at the offense and went, hey, I probably fit in pretty good there. I'd probably be a pretty good fit for that offense, because you're right, he looks like he would be tailor-made for what Tennessee likes to do with their receivers outside, for sure.
Tornado Vol says, is the over-under for 800-yard plus receivers is set at 2.5. Do you take the over or the under? He said, I'm going with the under, but I think Brew goes 1,000 plus, and Squirrel/Thornton also push for 1,000. So 800 yards, if the over-under was set at 2.5, you clearly take the under there, because that'd mean 3 receivers getting over 800 yards or set receiving yards. I think that's excessive, right?
Yeah, I mean, you would think that if you get to that point, that's pretty ridiculous. I mean, this past year, Ced got hurt, so you couldn't get a real judge on it. But for most of the year, you had Brew and Jalin. Brew ended up with almost 700 yards, and
Jalin had over 1,200.
Jalin had silly numbers, and had Jalin played the bowl game, he would have broken Robert Meacham's record for receiving yards in a season. I would go under as well. I think it's far-fetched to think they're going to get 3 at 800 plus, but I do think that they have a 1,000-yard guy and somewhere right around 800.
Yeah, the thing that gets lost is they like to run the football. They want to be balanced. I mean, this is not going to be an 80-20, pass to run ratio. So, I would take the under on that. I don't know that you'll see 3 receivers put up that amount of yardage. I mean, I think that's a tall task to do. So give me the under, but give me 2. Not 1, 2.
We got another Coach Prime question, so the GQ will be happy about this one. Upper East Tennessee Vols says, what kind of impact in college football recruiting do you see Coach Prime having, especially since he is targeting Georgia and Florida? Also, does Tennessee ever look at student athletes further east than Knoxville?
Well, sure they do. But, yeah. I mean, there's got to be somebody up there worth recruiting. I mean, every year somebody thinks, oh, this guy's really good. My cousin Amos Rogan, he was a big fan of Malachi Dowell at White County. Malachi had a phenomenal year, man. 3,000 yards rushing is ridiculous. A lot of people over there in White County thought he ought to be, a Power 5 guy. But, but he's going to Austin Peay, and that's great. He'll do really well there. There's no shame in that. Again, I think to be a Power 5 football player, it takes, it takes just something real special. I mean, the people that get to play football at the Power 5 level, it's a real blessing. And I don't think a lot of people realize how much of a blessing it truly is, because there's a lot of good players that just don't end up with that opportunity.
Yeah, and as for the Deion Sanders question, he's going to make noise and he's going to be talked about. At some point, he's got to be successful. I'm not saying he won't be, but he has to be successful. And there's a geography thing to this thing too, right? I mean, you're going to go to South Florida and pull out 10 kids and take them to Boulder, Colorado. I mean, he's going to have to recruit Texas. He's going to have to recruit on the West Coast. He could cherry pick some in the South, with some potential relationships. But I don't think he's going to come in and suddenly scare Georgia, scare Florida State, scare Florida, and get a bunch of recruits from those guys. Now, I'm not saying he won't get some Florida kids, but head to head, is he going to beat out Florida and Florida State consistently to put a class together? I have a hard time seeing that long term. I think he's got to make some hay in Texas. I think that's where you will see them be the most active and the most successful in the state of Texas, in my opinion.
Well, and that's where he coached high school ball. That's where he's got, some connections. And furthermore, I think at the end of the day, Deion is much like he tried to use Jackson State as a springboard. Colorado is a springboard for him to go get the next big job. So, how long will he be there? I don't know. Will he do a good job? I mean, he surrounded himself with some good coaches. And, I think as long as they stay within the framework of the rules and stuff, I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, I'll say this, Eric, and looking at him and watching what he did at Jackson State and everything, it's not a gimmick. Deion Sanders coaching and running a program is not a gimmick. It's not just a flash or a fancy name or whatever. I mean, I think he's committed to it, and I think people see that he's committed to it. And the evidence of that is the staff that he's put together at Colorado says that he's committed to it. So I don't think it's a gimmick. I just don't know that he can go down there and be as successful in Florida, because it's a long ways to Colorado. It's not easy to get to.
Yeah, again, I mean, that's a tall task to get a bunch of highly rated 4-star and a couple of 5-star athletes to go there to Colorado and play. I don't care who you are. So can you get a couple? Sure. Are you going to get an awful lot to compete with the likes of Alabama, Georgia, LSU, and some of these teams in the SEC? Probably not on a consistent basis. Coordinators, as we wrap things up here a couple of minutes. Coordinators, Tim Banks and Joey Halsley speak to the media on Wednesday afternoon. And Alec Ablin, first time, new tight ends coach for Tennessee, spoke to the media. Brent Hubbs, any takeaways big time on the Tennessee football front as you now kind of start this winter workout phase of the offseason?
Well, I like to hear Tim Banks say, the two priorities for them are getting to the quarterback with 4 guys and tighten up in the back end of the secondary, because I think they got to tighten things up and take some more chances back there. And hopefully the competition in the back end this spring and this preseason, come fall camp, will allow guys and will force guys to play more aggressively and not just be tackle guys out there. They need some guys to go in and make plays on the football, and hopefully more competition will allow them to do that. I said this on the 2-minute drill and on Wednesday, and I believe this. I think this is going to be the most competitive spring that we've seen in a while, because I think the roster is getting closer. I'm not saying it's where Georgia's roster is or anything like that, but I'm saying if they can stay healthy over the course of the next 40 days and not lose anybody to crazy injuries or anything, I think they're going to be more competitive across the board this spring than we've seen in the past. And I think that's a real positive for Tennessee. That's my big takeaway heading into spring practice.
AP, you got anything from Wednesday? Not often do we get a lot of media availabilities for football outside of spring practice of the spring.
No, not much more than what Hubbs just said. I mean, I think it's good to hear that Tim Banks wants to get to the quarterback and wants to tighten up the back end. We'll see what tighten up the back end means.
Right.
I mean, does that
go do it?
Does that mean change? Or does that mean we're going to try to improve our schematics and technique? Because I think it requires change to truly tighten up the back end.
We'll see what happens. Spring practice not that far away. It'll be starting here in the a couple of months here. And
March 20th. March 39 days. Yeah.
So a little over a month actually. So It's really not that far away.
I look forward to that day, Hubbs.
March 20th.
Get me to March 20th.
Will you still be on baby food at that point from your procedure? What do we got going on there?
I just hope that we get to the March 20th. Let's get to that date. I'll be happy. I'll be the happiest man on the practice field, maybe. That'll be 1 month post tonsillectomy. And none of the people I know that have had it do me any favors by going, man, it's awful. It was the worst thing ever. Thanks.
But you'll be
Appreciate
okay.
it.
You'll be okay though, right?
I had mine done while I was wearing my George Brett 5 shoes, so I don't know what that feels like because I was a little feller when I had mine done.
As the doctor who did my daughters told us, it's like scooping the seeds out of a cantaloupe for a kid, and then you're literally like trying to uproot a tree trunk when you're an adult. So, sounds awful. The good news is for my wife, she'll. There's good and bad news. She won't hear me talk a whole lot after this happens. The bad news is I'm the worst patient on the earth. A simple head cold has me asking.
I
Jesus
can
to take me.
100% buy into that.
Oh, listen, I never will
Never
claim
dispute
things
it.
I will never. My wife is 1,000 times tougher than I am. My sister is 1,000 times tougher than I am. I am the worst patient on the earth, and I have no qualms saying that. I don't run from that. I don't try to act like something I'm not. I'm not good. A simple head cold has me telling Jesus to take me now. So it's going to be rough.
God, man.
Just be thankful you don't have enough experience for it to feel for you to be a good patient.
Yeah, I mean, you're the polar opposite of that. I mean, you're tougher than nails and had 77 procedures done. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, also I set off a metal detector like a case of nails at Lowe's does too. So, other than that, I'm in good shape.
All right. Big thank you to all you guys for sending in the questions here today and joining us on the Volquest Mailbag Podcast. Big thanks to you guys for always doing this. Austin Price, Brent Hubbs. I'm Eric Kane. Big thanks to.
Hey, Kane, I'll send you your list of 20 vocab words. It's like a spelling test now for you. I'm going to send you 20 names to research before the next podcast, so we can try to make sure that you're learning the history of sports pre 1990.
It'd actually be fun for me to list exactly what I know about each person and see how many of that list of 15 I would get initially before I research.
That's right. He's Eric Kane. That's Brent Hubbs. I'm Austin Price. And for Dennis Green and Daryl Green, this has been the Volquest.com Mailbag Podcast brought to our good friends Exterior Home Solutions.